So welcome to How to Audit SQL Server for Free. Hi, I'm Josephine Bush. I currently work as a DBA, and you can reach me on Twitter at HelloSQLKitty. A lot of people cringe when they hear auditing because they think they're going to get in trouble for doing something wrong, but I think auditing is a good thing. You want to make sure people are following proper procedure. If you don't have those procedures, it can help you figure out what you might want a procedure to look like. Maybe your company doesn't think it's important to audit. Maybe your company's required to audit, but you're not sure how to go about it. Even if you're not required, it shouldn't stop you from auditing. I set it up because I got tired of people blaming the database on why something was broken. And it was a good thing I prioritized the setup because we were required by a more heavily regulated company, and they need auditing reports that we review on a weekly basis now. You're basically in the dark without auditing. It can help you see who changed something. Maybe that changes what broke something. Maybe a user was set up for one purpose and then it got shared around and everybody's using it. It just really helps see anything that's going on in there. And my disclaimer on auditing, I just like to say this at the beginning and the end, just be really careful how you audit because you can overload or freeze up a production server. I didn't think it was even possible, but it happened to me with SQL Server Audit. And even if you don't overload your server, if you audit so much, you can't even pick through it all. It's going to be really hard to see what's going on anyway. So I just go with the less is more method. One of the first ways that you can audit changes with extended events. It's commonly referred to as XEVENTS. They are lightweight and flexible. You can audit what users do with this, but you also get some other stuff that you can collect in there for troubleshooting and performance issues. When you set it up, there's some templates that'll feel familiar if you've used Profiler before. And there's a few default sessions already there. SQL Server uses those, so it needs those, don't get rid of those, but you can go in there and look around and see how they're configured. XEVENTS was first available in 2008, and then in 2012 they added a GUI which helped make it easier to use it. To create an extended event, you go in the GUI and you can choose New Session Wizard, which is going to walk you through all the options, or New Session, which is just a dialog box, and you just fill out what you need. Once we have the XEVENT set up, you can watch the live data right from the GUI, and this is going to show you the events that were captured. It might not show anything if you have your XEVENT filtered in such a way that's not capturing stuff, or it could show a lot, and it might be surprising how many things are going on behind the scenes that SQL Server is doing. And I find it better to script it out once you understand the syntax. And this script here is going to get anything that SA does on the server. And you can see that with the where clause on the add event statement. So it's the session server principal name equals SA. So that's going to filter it down to just SA. And this here is, you can query it with the script as well. And I think it's easier to see what's happening. You do have to parse XML, so once you got the syntax there, it's a lot easier than going row by row in the GUI. And then it makes it way easier if you want to centralize your data too, so you can just query it. And again, you might see a ton of stuff, and here you can see it a little bit easier. There's stuff going on behind the scenes. If I say create database, there's other stuff SQL Server is going to do because there's things it does behind the scenes to make everything work. Nicely, you also have a way to set off a quick profiler trace, like quick, it's not profiler itself, but it's an extended event underneath the SQL Server agent. And you can just, it's just a quick look-see to see what's going on. Then you don't have to configure XEVENT to do it, and then just make sure you stop when you're done. Another way you can audit changes in SQL Server is SQL Server Audit. It is also lightweight and flexible. And it's good for auditing user actions, but it doesn't capture other server type info. So like you couldn't troubleshoot or performance tune with this kind of stuff. And this screenshot shows the locations where you can set up the audits. Those are not there by default. I just want to put them there so you can see where they would be. And you need one audit specification because that's where your audit data lives. And you need either one server and or one database audit to actually collect anything. And server audit was first available in 2008, only in enterprise. And by 2016, it's available in all editions. A server audit is generally good for auditing server level changes and or all databases at the same time. A database audit is good for auditing one database or a subset of activities in one database. Basically, if you go and audit at the server level all the databases at the same time, don't go and audit at the database level as well, those same things, because it's just going to cause a lot of duplicate auditing to happen. Here again shows you those locations I mentioned where you create the components. You just right click and you get a dialog box. And again, you need that audit specification first before you can set up the server or database audit. This script I'm going to go through really quickly. You can set up SQL Server Audit with scripts as well. This is just to show you it's possible. And there are links on a resources slide to help you better understand what all this means. So you have your audit specification, you set that up first. That's where it's going to write to. You have a server audit set up here. This is to do server and or database changes. This will just do database changes. Again, don't do this one if you have these same audit items in your server audit. You can right-click the audit specification, the GUI, just to see audit records. You might see nothing or you might see a ton. It just depends on what you're auditing. Thankfully, querying the audit is really easy. Excuse me, there's no XML parsing. It's way easier to see. Like you just see it in a table, you have to go row by row in the GUI. And this audit data is stored in UTC. And again, it makes it easier to centralize if you query it. Before I showed you an example of how to audit essay and extended events, this will audit essay with SQL Server Audit. There's some red bold there. I just want to draw your attention to those two audit actions. Those can get really big really fast, and I don't recommend using them unless you filter. And in this case, I'm going to filter on essay over in the audit specification on the left there. Server principal name equals essay. And I also showed you can filter on other stuff like schema name to exclude sys. It's just to show you kind of how you can filter. XEVENTS, so XEVENTS is easy to get started with, and it's got templates like Profiler. It's easy to view the events in SSMS, but querying with XML in the query can kind of be tough at first. And SQL Server Audit is also easy to view the audit log in SSMS. You don't need XML parsing to query the events. I think it's more straightforward to specify what you want to audit or not audit. Like if you want to just see if someone sets up a login on the server, that's way cleaner in SQL Server Audit. But overall, it's more complicated to set up than extended events, and it has no templates to guide you. And here are some quick comparisons. I'm just going to highlight differences for you. You can't delete or modify a SQL audit if it's running. You have to disable it. That's where I ran into trouble on my production servers trying to modify it. I had to try to stop it, and it was doing too much. Another thing, different locations, file extensions for each. There's just some different options there. Big difference, SQL audit, you don't have to parse the XML. If you want to know what host or IP the user was using when they made the change, well, you can't get that until SQL Server 2017 and later versions with SQL Server Audit. Nicely, XEVENTS has templates to help you out, but it's not the case with SQL Audit. And XEVENTS captures way more than just what users change, so it could be helpful for troubleshooting or performance issues. XEVENTS also only requires one item to set it up and have it work, whereas SQL Server Audit requires at least 2 and maybe 3, so it's a little bit more complicated. Again, my disclaimer, as I did crash a production server, it was SQL Server 2014 with SQL Server Audit. I just know it's possible. It was a unique setup required for PCI compliance. It was a high transaction server, very large database. I actually had to audit selects across the entire database. So yeah, it's not generally a setup I recommend, but sometimes it's needed. But basically, don't audit everything just because you can. Here's some more links, just get you more info. I actually did a full-length presentation on SQL Server auditing, so that's there as well. I know that was a lot of stuff in 10 minutes, so thank you for attending, and thank you to Data Minutes organizers for putting this together.